Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Joorge in the 5-minute pool on ICC. I never know how to pronounce this player's name. Joorge is probably wrong, but we'll go with that for now. And he is playing the extended Fianchetto. So, yeah, this is an interesting line that I've faced quite a bit recently. I could play knight a3 and try for a similar setup as I have in the past, but knight a3 is going to play b4, so let's just castle for now. I might go for something on the queen side, but I'm going to leave it open to determination. Maybe a4. Because still, if knight a3, b4, knight c4, there's d5. Although now I can go to e5. So yeah, okay, let's do this now. With the knight not on f6, he could have played pawn f6 and chased my knight once it lands on e5. So I feel a bit better playing it this way. All right, so now let's go knight c2, and we'll look to play d4. Yeah, this player is from Spain, and as white, they always play b3 on move 1. That's how I remember them. As black, I think their repertoire is wider, but as white, they very consistently stick with b3 on move 1. Let's open the center, and I'll take this way. I might look to play a3. I might look to send the knight into b5. I think this is pleasant. I think there's a real chance that black could be overextended here. Knight a6. Okay, so do I go for a3 or something else? Yeah, let's play a3. If he takes, I can take with the rook, because if black plays e5, trying to initiate a discovered attack, then I had rook e3 pinning him down the e file. So I believe that was working out. If I take, knight takes. Knight is rather stable there, isn't it? But maybe I can go after this a5 pawn. I think that's distinctly possible. He is a little bit behind in development, too. So knight c2, he may go knight c6, but nah, let's play it. Let's look to trade. And I want to pile up on that a pawn. My plan will be like bishop d2, maybe rook a3, and then rook fa1, and try to hit this thing with everything we've got. I figure it's going to take a couple moves for black to get organized anyways, like bishop g7 and castles. So maybe I can parlay that into something concrete on the queen side. If he plays knight c6, I was thinking knight e5. Oh, interesting. Okay, so he instead just decides to play the bishop out. So take, trade. Ah, that can't be bad. Let's do that. Or bishop d2 right away. Bishop d2 right away might be even more testing. Although, is he going to play knight e4? Knight e4 might be coming. There's bishop e3 as well. Maybe bishop e3 is a good compromise. That way we control b6, and I can try to threaten queen to b3, attacking the pawn on b4. Also, if knight e4, maybe I play bishop d4 and offer a trade of the bishops. Although I'd probably want to resolve the rook tension first. Let's pre-move this just to be careful and efficient. Plays d6. So if queen b3, what do you got? It looks like that pawn is going to fall. Yeah, I don't see what black does here. I guess they could take on f3, bishop takes f3, and then play rook b8, but that does not seem like what black wants at all. So they're going to let me take on b4. Well, let's do it. Rook b8, perhaps? Rook b8, maybe I can play bishop a7. If bishop takes f3, bishop takes b8. Yeah, this is just a clean pawn. I don't really want to drop my queen back because there is knight e4. So I don't want to play that immediately. Let's just play rook fd1. Looks sensible, lining up with the queen on d7. If knight g4, I think bishop d4 is still working. Although maybe one line I should have looked at is knight g4, bishop d4, e5. Something like that. Maybe on knight g4, bishop b6 is safest. Staying out of range of that black e-pawn. Well, I have got him to slow down a little bit. He was playing quick in the opening, but once he had trouble defending that B pawn and eventually losing the B pawn, he has slowed down significantly. Now that I have rook FD1 in, by the way, knight E5 is a threat. Maybe I could have played knight E5 on the previous move, in fact. And when they take the knight, we take on B7. There might be some trouble with the B2 pawn at the end, though. Okay, so here, rook A7 is tempting, but bishop takes F3 could be played in that case. So I might want to move the queen instead. Like queen E1, for instance. Yeah, let's go queen E1. That looks safe. Ah, they can just take and then take on B2, though. Sloppy. Yeah, they had bishop takes F3 and rook takes B2. Now I get a second chance at this. Rook B1, perhaps? Yeah, looks safe. Black is fairly active, though. Yeah, queen E1 was a poor move. I think that will be revealed in analysis. Bishop C6. Note that I can't play B3 because of knight C3. So maybe bishop D4 first. Yeah, let's play bishop D4 and offer a trade. Bishop A4. So take. If they take D1, we take F8. That looks good. Let's do this first. Rook DC1 or rook D4? Let's play rook DC1. We'll just guard the C2 square. Also guards the C pawn. Here I can play knight D4, attacking the knight and also the bishop. So let's do that. Probably knight C5 will be played, but then queen C3 adds another attacker to B3 and also lines up on this diagonal. Okay, let's come here. So you got to move the king now. Oh, he plays B5 instead. Wasn't expecting that. Knight B5 or knight C6? Knight B5, maybe there's bishop takes C4. So knight C6 perhaps. I could take, but this knight is very well placed on this square, so yeah, let's do this. If rook B6, knight B4, trying to come to D5, most likely. Ah, there's also knight takes E5. Okay, that might be a tactical trick that I'm setting up here. If rook B6, knight takes E5, D takes E5, queen takes E5 check with a fork on the king and the knight. Yeah, hence he goes to that square. Probably smart. Otherwise, he's running afoul of that tactic. Knight A5. He's going to go rook B8. Nevertheless, maybe I'll play this straight away just because. Bishop C6 followed by bishop B5. That looks pretty good. Let's do that. And try to cut off his rook from defending the bishop. Yeah, this piece is looking awfully lonely now, away from home. My queen controls the knight on A5. Knight E4 is not going to bug us. Okay, so bishop A4. B4 now? B4, bishop takes B5. I can take on C5, though. Let's do that. If takes C takes, the only issue is I think my knight on A5 is in trouble too. So I don't think I can play that way. So if he takes B5, or sorry, if bishop takes B5, C takes B5, rook takes B5, then I'm worried about my knight. Maybe I have knight B3 there? Actually, I might have knight B3. That seems to work. Let's do that. He's way down on time anyways, so it's not going to matter. But, okay, he's just giving a piece. Yeah, then we're going to get the win. Okay, so it got a little tricky tactically at the end, but we were up the pawn. The only thing was trying to break down the bishop on B3, supported by the strong knight on C5. That knight is unassailable on its current square, So I kind of have to be working around it or maybe eventually offer a trade for it. But as it turned out, the bishop on b3 was pretty unstable, so I was able to take advantage of that. Let's go back and have a look. So knight f3, b5. White can also play e4 here and just go after the pawn on b5 right away. Black will usually play either a6 or bishop b7, counterattacking e4 in that case. But I just stuck with the Fianchetto. I played g3, bishop g2. And now that the knight was committed to f6, I felt better about doing knight a3. Because if I play it right here, instead of castling, let's say, then black may play b4, knight c4, d5. And I can't go to a5 because that's covered by the queen. And if knight e5, maybe pawn f6. And my knight is getting chased around everywhere. I don't know if I want something like this to happen. And even though black has made 6 pawn moves in their first 7 moves, this doesn't look too appetizing for white. I'm getting mobbed by that wall of pawns. So I only did that once knight f6 is played, so that if b4, knight c4, d5, I can play knight e5. And then maybe go for d4 or a3 or something. So black played a6, I played c4, b4, knight c2. This is the only trouble with this line for black. I think the extended Fianchetto makes a lot of sense, and I faced it a couple times recently in another Blitz game and also against FIDE master Sean Vibert in my game from the North American Open. But there's a tendency for black's queenside to get overextended, and they can burn some tempos trying to support those far advanced pawns. So if white doesn't challenge the queenside, then I think the extended Fianchetto works out fine for black. But if they do what I'm doing here, I kind of question whether it's really the best option for black to try to gain space on the queen side. I think that might be premature. So a5, and then I open the center, d4. Pawn takes, knight a6. Let's add the engine right here. So here I played, I believe, a3. Excuse me. It's not fun making videos when you have a cold, let me tell you that. But I am having fun practicing my chess and talking to you guys, so... yeah, a3. I thought this was reasonable because I would like to attack this structure, but there is something to be said for simple development, like bishop e3 or bishop f4, bishop g5 even. Yeah, something like that. The computer seems to be in favor of putting the bishop out somewhere here. But I played a3. Now, if they took, I was going to take with the rook, because if e5 is played, I have this little idea, rook e3. The purpose of e5 would be to initiate a discovered attack on the rook and also attack the knight on d4. I see now I also have rook b3 attacking the bishop, which looks good too. What if here? Sack the exchange and then take on e5. Okay, and white's doing fantastic here as well. Strong light square bishop. So, yeah, this was an option. I could also maybe do like b3 and take with a bishop if I want. A little bit slower. But black played g6. I took here. And then knight took. The game would take a different course if pawn recaptured. Not exactly sure what I would do against that. Maybe black didn't like that because they felt like the knight on a6 would have to babysit the pawn on b4. But it is possible for black to try this. I probably would just develop now. Yeah, bishop e3 or bishop f4, something like that. It seems like b4 is more secure this way, though. Because as played, knight takes and then knight c2. Black just allowed me to take, and this pawn became a huge target. I actually think after knight c2, they maybe should have retreated their knight. Like maybe knight c6. Unless knight e5 or knight d4 is a good reply. Attacking c6. Because as played, it turned out to be too easy for white to win that b-pawn. Black never really put up any resistance to me winning that pawn. The engine thinks that black should play take, and then bishop g7, rook d1, castle. Okay, yeah, the pawn is safer on a5 than it is on b4, that's for sure. I'd probably still take white here, but maybe it's not much. So bishop g7, we traded, and I played bishop e3. The engine likes bishop d2, but I wasn't sure about knight e4 in that case. Idea, bishop takes b4 to take on b2. Rook b1. Maybe there's a tactical issue. Bishop takes e7, this undefended bishop on b7. It's kind of hard to see, though. I didn't look much further than bishop d2, knight e4, and just decided I didn't like the attack on b2, so in a longer game, I would have spent more time looking at bishop d2. Instead, though, I played this bishop e3 move, and then d6, and queen b3. Yeah, and black just castled and let me take here. Interesting that the engine doesn't think that's too bad for black, so it seems to think there's plenty of compensation. Maybe connected with this rook b8 and bishop takes f3 plan. Did black play rook b8 here? They played queen b7 first, okay. So had they played rook b8 immediately, then bishop takes f3 is a threat. So I'd probably be looking at moving my queen. If queen d2, again, there's knight e4, though, with tempo. I still don't like that so much. Maybe something like queen a3? What's wrong with queen a3? Knight d7. Now the bishop lends an attack here. Rook a2, queen c8. Yeah, and the engine likes black's compensation. Black's position is free of weaknesses. They've only got one pawn chain, and it's a very well-maintained pawn chain, whereas I have two pawn islands. And maybe black has some Banco Gambit-style counterplay where they can look forward to playing down the b-file, and it'll be hard for me to make use of this extra pawn. But they played queen d7, and I saw a little late that I actually had knight e5 here if I wanted. I'm not sure how great this works out. Actually, it probably does work out pretty well, because if d takes e5, queen takes b7, queen takes b7, bishop takes b7, I've traded a pair of minor pieces, but more importantly, I've got rid of black's light square bishop. And if rook b8, I think rook a7 is probably just really strong for me. And this bishop is supported, and I can look forward to moving my b-pawn up. It helps a lot that I've forced black to occupy e5 with a pawn and thereby block their own dark square bishop. That's not a situation black wants. So yeah, I wish I would have seen knight e5 a move earlier. I played rook fd1 just on general grounds and noticed that now knight e5 was even more of a threat, but it didn't sink into me that I could have played it on the previous move. So black did this, and I played the queen back, but that was probably a mistake. So I can play bishop a7 here. I don't recall if I looked at that move. I know I looked at bishop a7 in a similar position, but yeah, if bishop a7, bishop takes f3, now I take on b8, and it looks like white's winning the exchange. So yes, this was playable too. And black would have to move the rook somewhere. And then maybe I can go knight e5 all the same. So instead I played queen to e1. Black played knight e4. Yeah, I thought they were just going to play bishop takes f3 and then go take on b2. I'm still better here somehow. Why is that? E takes f3, rook takes b2, and then c5 or something? Or bishop d4 hit the rook, and now c5 or rook a7? Something along these lines. I think the engine likes white's two bishops and the potential for breaking up black's pawns in the center. Although I did have to give back a full pawn, so it's hard to believe that I could be that much better in a position with equal material that's been simplified like this. And black's structure still looks pretty weakness-free, but that being said, white does have some dynamic potential with the two bishops and the possibility of c5. So knight e4, I played rook b1. Knight d4 also comes to mind. Bishop c6. Instead, rook fc8 looks better. Yeah, I'm not sure about this plan of bishop c6, a4, b3, etc. Maybe black should just bring their rook over to the queen side and attack the pawn on c4. Because mind you, I can't play b3 because of knight c3, forking the two rooks. So that was impossible for the moment. Instead, bishop c6, I played bishop d4, offering a trade. They went here. Again, probably not the best. I took g7 and then played rook dc1. And now that a couple pieces were getting exchanged, I felt like I was closer to being able to convert my pawn or make that pawn meaningful. Also, black's position looked loose to me. Like bishop b3 kind of invites knight d4 with the discovered attack on the knight. Yep, and now queen c3, threatening knight e6 or knight f5 and queen g7. This move surprised me. I thought black would play king g8, but I guess e5 is a little more forceful. So here I played knight to c6. That looks to be the correct call. So I don't want to take on b3, because if I do that, then this knight becomes a monster. I've traded off my one piece that could offer itself in exchange for that knight without losing material. So yes, I'd be up a pawn for the moment, and the computer still gives me a small edge, but let's say black just simply doubles on the b file. It looks very tough for white to make progress here, because as long as this rook blocks white from playing b4, I can't kick that knight out of c5. And it's a great piece. Blockades my queen side entirely. So that's why I don't want to leap at the opportunity to take on b3. I want to try to get rid of the knight rather than the bishop. If I can attack the bishop via tactical means, I might do that. But the knight is the piece I'd really like to exchange for, if possible. So I played knight c6, hitting the rook. And I think he saw what would happen if he played something like rook b6, because rook b6 would be natural, but that runs afoul of knight takes e5. And then after d takes
check.
e5, queen takes check, and we get the fork on the knight and the king. So hence he played rook c8. I went knight a5, attacking the bishop, and he went back. Okay, it looks like this idea that I came up with now, bishop c6 followed by bishop b5, is not bad. Also, rook a1 could be played here, probably in preparation for playing bishop b5, guarding the a4 square again. Yeah, so with this maneuver, I'm kind of encircling this bishop. Yeah, rook a1 would have been a refinement of this idea over protecting a4, and then play this on the next move. But I played it right away, and now knight takes b3 is the threat. He played bishop here, and I went b4. So black's last chance is knight e4. Idea being if I take here, he can at least take on a5. Still kind of tough, though. Knight e4, I can maybe play the queen back, and my queen maintains the knight on a5, and I keep this attack on b3 too. But after bishop a4, b4 does look to be a good idea. And he spent a lot of time here and just wound up losing. But I was just debating internally which way to take. Should he take on b5? Because the way I took in the game, for a moment I thought it wasn't good because of rook takes b5. Whereupon if I take here, then a5 would be hanging. But then I saw that I could just play knight b3 and save my knight. And this knight is still pinned. We're going to take it with the pawn next move if it doesn't move. So it looks like white's just winning a piece with this line. As opposed to b takes c5, which is also probably good, but not as good as c takes b5, opening the c file. So yeah, as played, black played knight e6 and just lost a piece. All right, so I think black created more problems than they had to for themselves with the b4 pawn. Looks like right around here after I played a3, there were better ways for them to ensure that I didn't win one of the queenside pawns. Because as the game unfolded, I pretty simply won b4, and even then black has some play, but they had to be precise. I'm surprised they didn't go for bishop takes f3 and rook takes b2, because that was the most direct way to win the material back. I certainly should have seen knight e5, though, after queen d7, because queen d7 walks right into the range of my knight, so I should have seen that one. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll be back again soon with another one. Talk to you guys later.